Alrighty, welcome on back, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode 63 of season 2024. It's AFLW Week 6. Week 6 episode. Jeez, I don't know where my brain was going then. So, as always, we're going to review the round 5 games from AFLW. We'll then jump into a preview of all the round 6 matchups. If you're here for AFL Grand Final content, that will be in episode 64 of the podcast, so that comes out on Friday. So check back for that, but also stick around, learn about the AFLW. The season is cracking along. We're going to jump into all that content very soon. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. A lot of content has gone out on the YouTube channel recently, so go check that out if you're on Spotify right now. Plenty of content. AFL Men's, AFLW, a lot going out. So go check that out. Podcast twice a week on YouTube and Spotify. Plenty of other socials at All Aussie Rules everywhere. Sometimes there's a space, sometimes there's not, depending on what. But should be easy enough to find. It's always the logo down below. Let's jump into the round 5 matches of the AFLW. And we started on a Tuesday, as we have been for the last couple of weeks, and we continue to for the next couple more. And we had Richmond v Port Adelaide in Melbourne. A poor kicking Richmond got the win here. They kicked 6-12-48, beating another poor kicking team in Port Adelaide 3-9-27. Just a side note, as we're going through this game, I am working on my AFLW stats, putting it all together for the season, so hopefully by next week's episode we'll have a little bit more of an in-depth analysis of season trends and whatnot for teams. This one, Richmond looked in control basically the whole day. 1-5 to 0-1 in the first quarter, led the way. By halftime they were 22 points up. Extended it out even further by a point, out to 23 points at three-quarter time, and there was only one goal each kicked in the last quarter. So the work done early in the first quarter, and just kind of continued on throughout the match, I guess. We'll look at the team stats. First up, disposals were very similar, +4 to Richmond. Inside 50s were actually dominated by Port Adelaide. They just couldn't convert their opportunities. Had an extra 7 inside 50s in this match. Disposal efficiency was quite poor from Port Adelaide. They really struggled to look after the ball. Clearances they did well at Port Adelaide. Richmond struggled. Uncontested football was Richmond's, whereas contested football was pretty level. Turnover game, as I said, their disposal efficiency was quite poor, Port Adelaide, so no surprise that they had an extra 5 turnovers than Richmond. Marks 38 to 19. I think Richmond looked their best when they are controlling the marks and not always just blazing away. Tackles +16 for Port Adelaide, so they tackled pretty well here. They typically do, though, to be honest. They are one of the better tackling teams. A look at some of the best players. Goal kickers first. The 2 multiple goal scorers in this one was Katie Brennan for Richmond. She kicked 3-1. And Gemma Houghton for Port Adelaide kicked 2-2. Best players, we'll start with a winning team, Richmond. Monique Conti, 23 touches, 2 behinds, could have had an outstanding game. 7 tackles, 4 clearances. I mean, when is she ever not good? Let's be fair. Elise Sherrin was good. She had 16 touches, 9 tackles. Ellie McKenzie, 22 touches. I'm just trying to find anyone else that stood out. Obviously, Brennan kicked 3 goals, was huge in the forward line for them. Nothing else really stands out for Richmond. Meanwhile, for Port Adelaide, Melinda Scholes, as the ruckman, did really well. 26 hit-outs to go with 17 disposals and 7 tackles. They also had plenty of other people that performed pretty solid. Maloney, 11 touches and a goal with 9 tackles is a really good performance. 20 touches for Brooksby. So overall, Richmond kind of controlled this one. Port Adelaide wasted opportunities, but so did Richmond. In the end, probably should have been closer than 21 points. But in the end, Richmond get the W and the 4 points in their first game of the weekend. Those two teams and the next two teams both played 2 games this weekend. So the next game was Carlton, North Melbourne. This was on Wednesday night. And it was an absolute domination, as you can see from the scoreboard. Carlton won 4-10. North Melbourne 12 goals, 7-79. The Roos are looking dangerous. 5 first quarter goals for the Roos. Got them off to a flyer. They had 7 goals by half time, 10 by 3/4 time, and finished with 12. Carlton kicked their only goal of the match with about 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. So not the best result for the Blues, but the Kangaroos are flying. Look at the team stats here. 323 disposals for North Melbourne is a really high number in a AFLW game. 153 handballs is huge, plus 13 inside 50s. So they pretty much just dominated this whole game across the board. Clearances were pretty level, plus 2 to North Melbourne. So not too much discrepancy there, but contested football plus 35 is a massive margin, as is plus 53 in uncontested possessions. So just a complete domination. And having so much more of the ball and having 8 less turnovers is a really good sign as well for Kangaroos. So they really just looked perfect, in all honesty, in this game. Only 42 marks. So they were just running with the ball, running it through the lines, getting it over the back and scoring goals. Tackles was won by Carlton plus 30, but that's 100% due to the fact that the Kangaroos just had the ball all day long. From start to finish, they just controlled the ball. Multiple goal scorers. Randall kicked 3 for the Roos, and then Emma King and Bella Eadie both kicked 2. Everyone else was single goal scorers. Sorry. In terms of fantasy / best players, Ash Riddell is again no surprise to anyone. She had 36 touches, 7 tackles, 3 clearances, 418 metres gained. Just had a lot of the football all day. Also for Kangaroos, Mee King was good, 26 touches. 18 of those were handballs, 6 tackles, 6 clearances. You could read out pretty much anyone from North Melbourne. They played well. Garner, 22 touches, a goal. Emma King, as we said, kicked 2 goals with 11 touches, 17 hitouts. Tripodi, 17 touches, 9 tackles. Like Bella Eadie, 20 touches, 2 goals. You can pretty much read out most of the Kangaroos lineup in this one. For the Blue Baggers, highest fantasy scorer for them was Keely Shearer. She had 26 touches, 10 tackles, 4 clearances. Played a really good game. Mimi Hill was good, 26 touches, 5 tackles. Outside of that, I mean, there's not the greatest reading for Carlton, in all honesty. They couldn't get their hands on the ball most of the day, and ended up, copying a bit of a loss there, but it's not the end of the world for them. They were going up against one of the best teams in the competition. We jump to Thursday night football, and this is, if you haven't watched it, maybe watch the highlights, but it also might be worth watching the actual game. It's probably one of the better showcases of AFLW this season so far. It was Geelong Hawthorn down at GMHBA Stadium. High scoring affair, 9-7-61 for Geelong, 12-7-79 for the Hawks. Geelong got away in the second quarter. Looked like they were going to cruise away a bit here. They went up by a couple goals in that second quarter. Hawthorn then clawed them back. We were only a couple points down at half time. Hawthorn then kicked the first 4 goals of the second half, so kicked 6 in a row to really just take all momentum into the game. And then Geelong fought their way back off and on, but in the end couldn't get close enough and lose the match by 18 points. Look at some of the stats here. Hawthorn dominated possession to 290 to 219. Again, quite a lot of handballs from them. Plus 6 in inside 50s. Both teams' disposal efficiency was quite high, as was their efficiency inside the forward 50. Hawthorn dominated clearances, and that's where this game was probably won or lost. Plus 10 in clearances is a really big margin. Led by the hitouts. We'll look at the ruck in a minute, but 50 hitouts to 14 in favour of Hawthorn. They just controlled the middle of the ground all day long, or all night long, sorry, it was a night game. Contested footy plus 31 to Hawthorn, uncontested footy plus 46 to Hawthorn, and they also had 2 less turnovers than Geelong, so really, Hawthorn clear winners, I think, in this one. Only 18-point margin in the end, which maybe it could have been more. Looking at the numbers, it certainly feels like Hawthorn probably should have won by more. Geelong just stuck around, did their best, but in the end just couldn't quite go with the Hawks. Best players, as we said, ruck Hawthorn domination in this one. 39 hitouts to Lucy Wales to go with 22 disposals was an outstanding achievement, outstanding performance. Multiple goal scorers for Hawthorn. Laura Stone kicked 3, McDonough 2, and Eardley 2. And then for Geelong, Maloney kicked 3, and Shelley Scott kicked 2. Best players, I mean, this isn't probably going to surprise anyone, but Hawthorn's players are all going to be up the top of this list. Liza West, 24 touches, 16 tackles. There was a lot of tackles in this game, to be fair, from a couple players. As I said, Lucy Wales was outstanding. Breed, 20 touches, 10 tackles, with 8 clearances, was a really good job in the middle in this one. Lucas Rod, 26 touches, did really well. Bates, 28 touches. You can read out another probably 5 or 6 Hawthorn players that really did well in this one. For Geelong, Nina Morrison, 21 touches a goal with 11 tackles. Was a well thought out game from her, just didn't maybe have enough support. Prospacus, 21 touches and a goal. As we said, Maloney kicked 3 to go with her 19 touches. And Kate Darby was Geelong's ruckman, who, in all honesty, got absolutely belted in the ruck. No, nothing against her, but it was just an outstanding game by Lucy Wales. But it looks like, on paper, that Darby did okay. She had 12 touches, 7 tackles, 10 hitouts, and 4 clearances, but Lucy Wales was just in another class in this game. We move on to the Friday games, being that it was grand final weekend in the men's competition. There was no game Saturday, so they had 4 on Friday, and it was led off by the teams sitting at the bottom of the ladder, Collingwood, Gold Coast. It was a close game most of the way, only 2 points scored in the first quarter. Collingwood then kicked 2 goals in the second quarter. Gold Coast hit the front late in the third, and then Collingwood kicked the only goal of the last quarter through Imogen Barnett to win the game by 3 points for their first win of the season. Much needed win for the Collingwood Magpies. A look at some of the stats here. Gold Coast had more of the ball. They went forward more often with an extra 2 inside 50s. But in the end, it was just, I guess, a lot of grit and determination got Collingwood over the line here. Gold Coast won clearances. As I said, they won disposals. They won contested football. They won uncontested football just. They had less turnovers, but they just couldn't convert their opportunities in the end. Collingwood tackled really, really well here. They had 87 to 58 tackles. Best players, only one multiple goal scorer, and that was Tani White for Collingwood. She kicked their first and their third goal. Good performance from her. And then best players, we'll start with Collingwood. Britt Benici absolutely carried their team. Got injured in the first half. Kept plugging away. Looked like she was running on fumes, but kept going. Kept dominating. 28 touches, 9 tackles, 8 clearances. A really good performance. As we said, Tani White kicked 2 goals. She had 13 touches. And as always, tackled really well with 10. Sarah Rowe, running up and down the wings, did well all day, 19 touches. Geordie Allen, Ruby Scheisler, all good. And then on the other side of the fence for Gold Coast, Lucy Single, 31 touches and 10 tackles with 9 clearances, was an outstanding performance. Charlie Rowbottom, as she always does, racked up the possessions, 29 touches, 6 clearances. And Daisy Darcy was also pretty solid with 14 touches, 7 tackles, 203 metres gained. But in this one, I think Gold Coast could have won it. They wasted their opportunities, I think, in the end, and Collingwood made them pay by taking the 4 points. We jump into the next game, which is probably the biggest surprise of the weekend, I think. Not maybe the result, but the margin is. I just didn't see happening. I tipped Melbourne. We'll get on to my tips shortly, but it was a game that, at best, you would have expected it to be close, but I certainly didn't see the Bombers absolutely tearing Melbourne to shreds. They won it 11-6, 72-117. Started early, 4 goals straight in the first quarter. 6 goals, 3-1-1 at halftime, and then in the second half it just continued. Second half was 5-3-0-0. So just a complete domination from start to finish in this one for the Bombers. Team stats, Bombers. I know how to speak. Bombers had plus 80 possessions, or disposals, sorry. There is a difference. 309 disposals is a huge number for them. Dominated kicks, dominated handballs, plus 26 inside 50s. They had over double the amount of inside 50s that Melbourne had. This was just an absolute demolition. Melbourne dominated the hit-outs 39-18, but Essendon dominated clearances 31-18, which isn't that big of a surprise that they dominated clearances when they dominated inside 50s by so much. Most of that was stoppage clearances, plus 10 in that area, but still plus 3 in centre clearances, plus 39 contested possessions, plus 50 uncontested possessions, plus 4 less turnovers than Melbourne. It was just a flat-out domination from start to finish in this game. Never at any point did Melbourne look like they had any control of this match. Best players, we'll start with goal kickers. No surprise here that there's going to be a few for the Bombers. Bannister kicked 4, Gamble and Clark both kicked 2. Nobody else kicked multiple goals in this one. Best players, Madison Propaskas, 32 touches and a goal. 7 clearances was really good. This is all just Bombers players, let's be honest. It was a one-way game. Nanscarlin, 24 touches. Bannister, as we said, kicked 4 goals from 15 touches, was outstanding. Kane, 19 touches and a goal. Sophie Alexander, 18 touches, was good, as was Radford. It was just one-way traffic all day long for the Bombers. For Melbourne, it's hard to find any real positives in this one. I just don't know. They had some players that performed okay, but their highest fantasy scorer was 77, so they didn't have much of the ball, and they didn't do a lot with it. And that pretty much sums up that match, I think, for the Melbourne Demons, who are having a very disappointing season after they were expected to go all right this year. Next up, we have St Kilda Fremantle, and this one was another sort of surprise. St Kilda won their first 3 games. They've now lost 2 in a row. This one at home to Fremantle, not a great result for them. After kicking the first and leading at halftime, Fremantle just edged away in that second half. Wasted some opportunities, in all honesty. They ended up kicking 3 goals, 7-25 to 2-2-14. So just on scores alone, looks like the Dockers wasted their opportunities. In this one, disposals were very similar, 238 to 237, so nothing too much there. But inside 50s, plus 16 for Fremantle. They were getting the ball forward a lot. They just couldn't convert it into opportunities. Clearances were very level. In fact, plus 2 to St Kilda. Contested footy went slightly to Freo. Uncontested footy slightly to St Kilda. Turnovers were actually quite low in comparison to what most teams average in the AFLW. 56 for Freo, 58 for St Kilda. Marks dominated by St Kilda, but they just couldn't get the ball moving forward enough, I don't think, in this one. And tackle count 73, St Kilda 52 for Fremantle. Only one multiple goal scorer in this one. It was Kukoc for Fremantle. She kicked 2 goals from her 3 possessions. Best players, we'll start with Freo as always. McCarthy, 25 touches. Kicked it behind, 7 tackles. 432 metres gained was really good. Mia Strom, 17 touches. 25 hit-outs, 4 clearances was good. Hayley Miller, 20 touches was good as well. Just an even team performance, I think, from Fremantle in the end. St Kilda, Lambert was their highest fantasy scorer and, in all honesty, probably their best player. 22 touches, 10 tackles, 5 clearances. Serene Watson almost pips her for best player. Did really well as well. 22 touches. Got the ball moving forward a lot. 494 metres, which is something that St Kilda were really struggling with in this game, is gaining territory. But Serene Watson did really well with that. Hannah Priest, 21 touches, was solid. But in all honesty, Fremantle looked the better team in it and got the win. So probably the right result in terms of who controlled the match. The final game on Friday night was Bulldogs Sydney. Bulldogs get back-to-back wins after a really slow start to their season. So they're now 2-4, I think, after round 5. Meanwhile, Sydney, their season is getting away from them. I mean, they've got some injuries. There's the excuses for them, but it was a really bad weekend for the Sydney Football Club. Started pretty poorly on Friday and just got worse. If you've watched the AFL Men's Grand Final, you know what I'm talking about. A look at some of the stats here. It was a bit of a to and fro game. There was about 5 or 6 lead changes, but in the end, the Bulldogs kicked the only goal of the last quarter. They kicked 1 goal 4 to 0-0 in that last quarter to overrun the Swans. A bit of an interesting moment late in this game too, if you haven't seen it, where Sydney accidentally conceded a rush behind because went around the point post, which could have been a costly behind if the game had been if they had kicked another goal and lost by a point. They would have been really disappointed. Sydney dominated disposals in this. They had like over 80 more disposals than Bulldogs, but they just couldn't get territory. Bulldogs had an extra 7 inside 50s from 80 less disposals, which just tells you that Sydney weren't doing enough with their ball use and getting the ball going forward and getting it inside 50, which you're not going to kick a goal in AFLW if you're not getting inside 50s. I mean, in any football, but you really need to be getting those inside 50s. Clearances were also dominated by Sydney, plus 10, but they just couldn't convert it. They were getting clearances, but just not moving it into their 50 well enough. Contested possessions were plus 4 for Sydney, but they really dominated uncontested football, but they also turned it over a lot, plus 10 turnovers for this match. 5 goals 9 to 5-2, so Bulldogs certainly wasted some opportunities, but still got the win. We'll look at some of the best players in this one. Only the one multiple goal scorer, it was Rebecca Prevatelli. She kicked 2 for Sydney. Everyone else was a single goal kicker. Best players, we'll start with the Bulldogs. I mean, they had a lot less of the ball, so if you're looking at fantasy scores and whatnot, it was dominated by Sydney, but that doesn't give a good indication of how this game was played at all, I don't think. I think they had a lot of the football, but they just weren't being damaging enough with it. For Bulldogs, best players, Alice Edmonds in the ruck was outstanding. She had 30 hit-outs in this one, which is quite a lot. 12 disposals as well, 5 tackles. In all honesty, the ruck battle was pretty even. Alexia Hamilton for Sydney also had a lot less hit-outs, but still played really well with 10 tackles and 10 disposals. Also for Bulldogs, Gut Currank, 15 touches and a goal. Fitzgerald, 18 touches, was good. It was just a good team performance, in all honesty, from the Bulldogs. Meanwhile, Sydney players dominated fantasy, as we hinted at before. Laura Gardner, 31 touches, 8 clearances, 351 metres gained was everywhere. Lucy McAvoy was good with 21 touches. Hurley, 20 touches and a goal. Head, Steen, all dominated fantasy scores, but perhaps weren't as damaging as their Bulldogs counterparts with a lot less disposals. As I also mentioned, there was no games on Saturday due to the AFL Men's Grand Final, so we jump across onto Sunday down in Launceston. I went to this game. It was North Melbourne, Richmond. Poured with rain for the first half before clearing up a bit in the second half, but I mean, it was still wet weather football throughout. Richmond started really well in this, probably controlled most of the first half. Looked like they were going to go in to halftime with a lead. Well, they did end up going in with a lead, but only of 1 point. North Melbourne kicked a goal through Alice O'Loughlin late in the second quarter. And then from then on, it was kind of one-way traffic most of the second half, all the way to the Kangaroos, who, I mean, they are one of the best teams, if not the best team in the AFLW at the moment. So no real blight on Richmond for losing this one. They ended up losing it by 12 points. They did get within a kick with about halfway through the last quarter, but pretty much instant reply by Jasmine Garner. Got the Roos over the line by 12 points, 3-9-27 to 2-3-15. So it could have probably been a bigger margin, but as I said, it was really wet in that first half especially. So no real surprise that is how it went. North Melbourne plus 30 disposals, plus 8 inside 50s. They did control most of the game, certainly in that second half. Clearances were dominated by North Melbourne, 35 to 24. Contested footy plus 27 for North. Uncontested footy was controlled by Richmond. They did look good when they were able to chip the ball around and just gain territory that way. But invariably, it's not the best way to play wet weather football, and sometimes you make an extra mistake or two by doing that. Tackles 97 for North, 85 for Richmond. It was obviously going to be a high tackling game, being wet weather football. A look at some of the best players. No multiple goal scorers in this one. Also worth noting that Kangaroos lost Emma Kearney about a minute into this game. One of their best players, their captain, did a hammy literally as soon as the game started. So tough break for her and a tough break for the Kangaroos. Best players, I mean, there was 2 standout players on the ground, one for each team. We'll start with North Melbourne. Jasmine Garner was outstanding. 26 touches, 12 tackles, 5 clearances, a goal, and a goal assist as well as a behind. So really good performance from her. Ash Riddell, always good, 24 touches in this one, 9 tackles, 7 clearances. Mia King was good with 22 touches. Bella Eadie, 16 touches and a goal. Just, yeah, a lot of good performances from Kangaroos. For Richmond, a couple okay players, but their standout was Monique Conti, 35 touches, 9 tackles, 7 clearances. Standout player on the ground, I think. I personally think she was the best on ground. 527 metres gained. Just a really good performance and very clean. Certainly early when it was wet, even through the third quarter. Couple mistakes late in the game when trying to take the game on a bit, but absolutely clean hands, just unbelievable skills from her. Kate Dempsey was good, 23 touches, 5 tackles. Elise Sheron was solid. Poppy Kelly was good in the ruck, but overall, Kangaroos were just too strong. They're one of the class teams of the competition. Moving on to Giants West Coast. West Coast, what about them this year? They're having an absolute cracking year. Daisy Pearce has transformed this program around, no doubt about it. 10-4-64 to Giants 6-4-40. I know Giants aren't really travelling the best, but West Coast have really set themselves up now. They could well be playing finals this year, and from the position they're in, they may well do. They may well have a good chance of that. After a quarter time, they really took control of this game. They're only 4 points up at quarter time, but from then on it was just one-way traffic for the next quarter to 2 quarters. By 3/4 time, they're 33 points up. Giants had an okay last quarter, but it was too little too late. Giants dominated possession. They dominated inside 50s plus 7. They won clearances by 1. Uncontested footy was all the way the Giants. Turnover count was very similar for both teams, but the Eagles just made use of their forward momentum. Every time they went forward, they were looking really, really dangerous. For the match, they had, 32 inside 50s, and they kicked 10 goals for. So they were getting a score almost every second inside 50, which is a pretty solid performance, whereas the Giants only managed 6 goals for from their 39 inside 50s. So they were only doing it getting a score 1 in 4, which is half as often as what the Eagles were. So that's probably the difference in this game, was just the dangerous levels that that West Coast had when they went forward. Looking at goal scorers, Ella Roberts kicked 3 and Kelly Gibson kicked 2 for the Eagles. The only multiple goal scorer for the Giants was Tani Evans, who kicked 3 goals. Best players, Ella Roberts, 20 touches, 3 goals, 9 tackles, 4 clearances. Really good game. Isabella Lucas, 594 metres gained from her 23 disposals and a goal, was outstanding. Alison Drennan, Tess Lyons in the ruck, was really good at hit-outs, even though the Giants dominated clearances. Just a really solid performance from most of the Eagles girls. Giants, they had a lot of players play well. They had a lot of the ball. They just weren't damaging enough when it went forward in the end. Alice Parker, 23 touches, 7 tackles. Alicia Eva, 15 touches, 9 tackles and a goal. Huntington, 21 touches. Took 11 marks, which is quite a lot. Alicia O'Dowd, as the ruckman for GWS, has been really outstanding all year. Another good performance from her in this one. But yeah, Eagles just too good. Giants had their opportunities, but Eagles just were too good in this one. On to Brisbane Adelaide. This was billed as probably game of the round. 2 of the top 3 teams, I think, from what we've seen this year, it's pretty clear that the top 3 teams are probably North Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide. So this was a big game. It was billed as a big game, and it lived up to expectations. Ended up 2-point margin. Brisbane led most of the way, certainly up until halfway through the third quarter, when Adelaide banged in back-to-back goals through Caitlin Gould. She got them both. Brisbane then hit the front again late in the third quarter, held it for the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, before Adelaide got a couple more goals and looked like they might be able to hold on here, but then Brisbane kicked the last 2 through Dakota Davidson and Taylor Smith to give them a 2-point win. Those 2 goals put them 3 points up. Adelaide did manage a rushed behind late, but it was a little too late, and it ends up 2-point win to the Lions, who have really set themselves up for a top 4 spot now. But I mean, Kangaroos and Adelaide are still both going to be right up there as well, you would imagine, based on what we've seen so far. Disposals were very level. Inside 50s actually +7 to Adelaide on the road, so they had a decent performance. They just perhaps didn't make use of their opportunities. Clearances +7 to Adelaide. Contested possession +9 to Adelaide. Brisbane did get the uncontested football and dominated the turnover game. In the end, Adelaide had 65 turnovers, which was just too many in this match, and that's probably the killer blow for them, I reckon, in this one. Was just they were getting good touches, they were getting the ball forward, but in the end they were just turning it over too much. Tackles, 75 to Brisbane, 54 to Adelaide. Look at some of the best players. Taylor Smith kicked 2 for Brisbane, and Caitlin Gould, as we said, kicked 2 goals in that third quarter for the other team, Adelaide. I knew what I was talking about. I just had a big brain explosion, I guess. Best players, we'll start with Brisbane. We always start with the winning team, so we'll start with them. Ali Anderson, 32 touches. She's had a lot of it this year. Another outstanding game from her. Also good, Isabel Dawes, Conan, Hodder, Spark, both Ruby and Kathy Spark. Grider was good. Taylor Smith kicked 2 goals, was good. For Adelaide, as is always the case, for Adelaide, best player, Ebony Marinoff. she's had an outstanding season. She's going to go close to league MVP at the moment, I would say. There's a couple of people fighting for it. Ali Anderson probably won't be too far off either, but I think Ebony Marinoff's season is outstanding. 31 touches a goal, 3 clearances, 522 metres gained. Just kept going and going and going, and nearly got them over the line. And Hatchard as well has been really good this year. She had 27 touches a goal, 7 clearances. Randall had plenty of it, was good. And Gould, as we said, 2 goals from her 11 touches was also a good performance. But in the end, Brisbane get the win. Could have gone either way this game. I would imagine we'll see both of these teams late into, I was going to say September, but they obviously don't play finals in September. Their final series is November through early December, I believe. I think the grand final might be like the first week of December. But yeah, I would imagine we'll see both of these teams playing late into the final series. I certainly think they're 2 of the best 3 teams in the AFLW at the moment. One final game of the weekend just been was Port Adelaide Carlton at Adelaide, and Port Adelaide dominated it. Gave Carlton their second bad loss of the round, which was really disappointing for them. Port Adelaide kicked 8-10, 58 to Carlton's 3-5, 23. Pretty close early. Carlton got the first goal. They were 2 points up at quarter time, but from the second quarter onwards, it was kind of controlled by Port Adelaide in a way, but I mean, it was still technically either team's game with about 10 minutes to go, and then Port Adelaide banged on 3 goals in the last 6 or 7 minutes, just to seal the game, but also extend that margin to make it look a bit more than it was. It was roughly like 15 points with 10 minutes to go. Ends up being 35 points, and looks a little bit more comfortable than perhaps it was looking like it was going to be. A look at the stats here. Carlton did dominate possession by plus 50, but Port Adelaide just dominated the territory battle. Plus 16 inside 50s and controlled the match in that way, even though they weren't winning the ball all that much, but Carlton just weren't really damaging. They handballed it a lot and just weren't moving the ball well. Port Adelaide plus 7 clearances. They won contested football, which was huge in this game, by 14. Uncontested footy did go the way of Carlton, but they keep saying it, weren't damaging. They also had 70 turnovers, Carlton, to Port Adelaide 65. And tackle count for both teams was through the roof, 82 to 89 in favour of Carlton. One multiple goal scorer in this game, Gemma Houghton, 2 goals from her 15 touches. Best players, as always, we start with the winning team, Port Adelaide. Dowrick, 21 touches, 7 tackles, 6 clearances, 541 metres gained. Was really damaging for Port Adelaide. Maria Maloney, 16 touches, a goal. Scholes, 11 touches, 25 hit-outs, 5 tackles, was good. And yeah, they just looked really, really solid, in all honesty, Port Adelaide here. Didn't dominate possessions, but they certainly moved the ball well throughout the match, led by Abby Dowrick. For Carlton, Keely Shearer, 28 touches, 6 tackles, 4 clearances, was probably their best player. Mimi Hill got a lot of it, 29 touches, only the 227 metres gained, which is probably a little bit of an indication of where they struggled a lot. They were getting plenty of the ball, just not getting the ball movement they needed to really threaten the Port Adelaide backline, in all honesty. But it was a solid performance from both teams. But in the end, Port Adelaide were the better team in this one, and they got the win. That brings us to the end of last round, and this is how my tips went. Started the week perfectly. I was like, how easy is this tipping game? Last week was really good. Started well this week with Richmond, North Melbourne and Hawthorn all getting up, but then she fell apart on that Friday. There was 4 games on Friday and I got them all wrong. So I keep getting Collingwood wrong. I tipped them wrong both times last week when they lost both. So I went Gold Coast this time and I got it wrong. Could have gone either way, that game, in all honesty. Essendon Melbourne, I was really wrong. Essendon absolutely towed up the Demons. St Kilda Freo, we got that wrong. Fremantle just went to Victoria and played an outstanding performance. Sydney were terrible. Bulldogs have won 2 in a row, so maybe they are slowly developing. They had a really, really rough start to their season. North Melbourne, Richmond on Sunday. We got that right, pretty close to the right margin as well. That was the expected result and we got it right. GWS didn't show up. West Coast were outstanding, so they got that one wrong. Brisbane at home got the win over Adelaide and we got that right. And then finished off, we went Carlton. I don't know why. I should have changed the tip. Certainly after how bad they were on like Tuesday or Wednesday night, whatever night they played, Wednesday I think. But Port Adelaide got that win comfortably in the end, and we got that wrong. So we went 5 of 11, makes us 32 out of 49. So not outstanding from us. A look ahead to round 6. This week there's an extra game. There's 12 games this weekend with 6 teams playing 2 games. We start on Tuesday night. Geelong, Fremantle. Geelong have had a rough start to their season this year. Things are not looking great for them. They're sitting 15th on the ladder. But if they're ever going to have a chance to make a move, this weekend is the weekend they have to do it. If they can win both these games, they're a chance. Fremantle, meanwhile, are 6th on the ladder. If they go down to Geelong and steal that victory, their season is looking really strong and a really, really good chance of not just playing finals, but maybe even either having a home final or pushing towards that top 4, because it's getting a little bit congested in that sort of area. Wednesday, we've got Hawthorn, Gold Coast. I don't have high hopes for Gold Coast. This will be a much tougher matchup than they had last weekend against Collingwood, where they couldn't win. So I think Hawthorn will be too strong. Once again, like Fremantle, they can really, really make a move this week and push for that top 4 spot. They haven't had the hardest run, in all honesty, so far this season, but they are getting the job done. They're sitting 4th on the ladder and a big chance this weekend to make a move. Same can be said for Bombers. They're sitting 9th on the ladder at the moment, but a game against Sydney, in which they'll go in as favourites, I would imagine, they should be too strong on Wednesday night, in all honesty. We've got a doubleheader on Wednesday, and you'd think the 2 home teams are probably going to be the ones that win them. Thursday night, we got Melbourne, who are another team like Geelong, who are just really struggling at the moment. And based on how they went the other day, you almost go for GWS in this one, even though GWS are not flying either. It will be an interesting matchup. I don't think we're going to see either team make finals. Melbourne really need to knuckle down if they're going to be any chance. Friday night, just the one game. We've got Adelaide, St Kilda. Adelaide will be looking for a bounce back after just getting edged out by Brisbane last week. St Kilda, after starting the season 3-0, have dropped their next couple. They need to win this one just to steady themselves. It's not do or die, but we're halfway through the season basically now. Some teams more than halfway, others not quite halfway, but they really need to make their move at some point. Otherwise, their season could get away from them. Moving on to Saturday games, there's 4 of them. We lead off with top of the ladder North Melbourne against the Bulldogs. Bulldogs starting to look a little better, but I think this game might be a bit out of reach for them, in all honesty. Kangaroos are flying. Richmond, Collingwood. Collingwood finally got their breakthrough win the other day, but I don't think they'll be good enough here for Richmond. Richmond are a much better team based on what we've seen this year. West Coast Port Adelaide is probably the most interesting game of the weekend almost. Eagles flying, overperforming of what people expected of them, not necessarily actually overperforming, but of what expectations were. They're probably the most over expectations so far this year. But Port Adelaide are also a team that they've had a couple bad results, but at the same time, I think they're the team that, similar to West Coast, were not expected to do much this year, but have certainly shown some good signs and improvement. I had them a few weeks ago just missing the finals. This is an important game. If they beat West Coast here, they're a definite chance for finals football. Final game, Saturday night football, is a good one down in Melbourne. Carlton hosting Brisbane. You'd expect Brisbane to probably win this. They're overall better team. Carlton coming off 2 tough losses in round 5. It's going to be a tough game for Carlton to win. Brisbane win it, they pretty much seal themselves in that top 4 battle going into the final few rounds. But I think Brisbane will be too strong there, won't they? The remaining games, there's 3 on Sunday. These are all the teams doubling up for the weekend. First off, we've got Gold Coast, Essendon. I think Essendon are going to be too strong. They played really well in round 4. Obviously, they're playing another game before then, so a lot could change, injuries, whatnot, but I think Essendon are probably too strong for Gold Coast. Sydney, Geelong. Loser of this is maybe done for the season, in all honesty, depending on how they go in their first game of the round. It's a tough one. I think Sydney maybe, but also, I mean, Geelong just haven't shown me enough. They were really good. I mean, they're a lot further down the ladder than they probably should be. They've had some close games. They're just struggling to convert them into wins. And then the final game of round 6 is Fremantle-Hawthorn over in the West. And this could be a massive game. If both teams win their earlier game in the week, this will be for a spot to really in that top 4, maybe even pushing higher in that top 4 for the winner. If either of these teams win both their games this weekend, they will really be in a strong spot to play finals. But conversely, if either of these teams lose both games, all of a sudden they're going to be really scrapping over the final month or so to make finals. So these are my tips for this weekend's games. As I said, we had a bad weekend last weekend, but we're going to try and bounce back here. It's a tough one, the first game. I've gone Geelong. I think they bounce back. They've got to at some stage. They're too good to keep losing. Fremantle are a good team. They're going well. It wouldn't surprise me if Freo did manage to win it. I've gone Hawthorn to beat Gold Coast. They should be too strong. Essendon should be able to take care of Sydney. Essendon played really well on the weekend. Melbourne, they're not going well, but at the same time, I'm not convinced on the Giants either, so I'm going with the trust in the Melbourne club, I guess. Adelaide should be too good for St Kilda. I know St Kilda started the season well, but in all honesty, Adelaide are a much better team. North Melbourne should be way too strong for the Bulldogs. Richmond should be too good for Collingwood. West Coast Port Adelaide, as I said, probably game of the round. I've gone West Coast just because it's in West Coast, but the winner has a lot on the line. Whoever wins will be fighting for the top 8. Carlton, Brisbane. I've gone Brisbane. I think they are the better team. Even on the road, they should be too strong here. Essendon should be too strong for Gold Coast. Sydney, Geelong could be a cracker. I've gone Geelong, but probably could go either way. Geelong need to win it though. Fremantle, Hawthorn. I've gone Fremantle, but it's another game that could go either way. And that's how that round goes. A quick look at the ladder for the season at the moment. So Kangaroos, the top couple have obviously played 6 games, the next couple haven't. So Kangaroos, Brisbane have played an extra game than some, but they are clearly, I think, the best 2 teams at the moment. Kangaroos sitting on 5 wins and a draw with a massive percentage. You think they're pretty much locked into finals from here. It's just going to be a matter of how they go in these last 5 games, whether they can keep winning them and lock in a home final in week 1 of the finals. Brisbane, they're now 5 wins and a loss. Their only loss coming in round 1 against Kangaroos, where they got smacked. So since then, they've really turned their season around. Hard to see them missing top 4. Adelaide and Hawthorn, both 4 wins and a loss from their 5 games. Both playing really well. I think Adelaide have a chance to really make a move on those top 2, but outside of that, there's probably not too many in the league that can. I think they're the top 3 teams. Hawthorn, they've got their season going well. 4 wins, a loss. A good weekend here. It could really elevate that even more. Richmond, they're 4 wins, 2 losses with a really high percentage. I would be shocked to see them miss finals. I think they're in that range from 4 to probably 6 in terms of best teams in the competition. I know that they've played an extra game than, say, Fremantle and St Kilda, but I still think that they're probably better than both of them. Fremantle have a real big chance this weekend to move up that ladder if they get 2 wins. Their percentage isn't great, but they're going well. West Coast, same. Their percentage is quite horrible, but they are getting wins. They're 4 wins, 2 losses. They're probably only 2 wins away from qualifying for finals. So a really big opportunity for them. St Kilda, they started the season well. They've struggled it lately, but I mean they're comfortably in 8th at the moment. A couple wins gets them back in their season. Essendon are starting to show a little bit. They played really well on the weekend. They've got 2 games this weekend. If they win them both, then they're all of a sudden right in the mix. Meanwhile, if they lose both, they're probably done. Port Adelaide, just a little bit off at the moment. Having played that extra game and still a game behind makes it difficult for them, but if they have a good couple of weeks, you never know. Sydney, they're going to be against it, I think. Their percentage is really poor. They're going to need some big wins to get their season going, but we'll see how that goes for them. The Bulldogs, they've won 2 in a row. I don't think they were too far back after 4 weeks, in all honesty. They have recovered it a bit with 2 wins in a row, but they're just not quite there. Same can be said for Carlton. They're just not quite good enough at the moment. GWS, their percentage looks really good. So they're a team that maybe with a few wins can get themselves going, but they're only 1 win and a draw from 5 games. It makes it difficult in an 11-match season, but I'm not fully writing them off. Same with Geelong. Their percentage is great. A couple wins this weekend for Geelong. All of a sudden, they'll still have some work to do, but they could be on the fringes of the 8 after this round. Melbourne, I think they're done, to be all honest with you. Their percentage is horrible. They've 1 win, 4 losses. They were shocking on the weekend. I'm not convinced that they can turn it around. Collingwood, they're going to be fighting for the bottom 3 or 4 spots. There's no doubt about it. They got a good win on the weekend against Gold Coast, but I don't see them winning more than 3 games for the season. Gold Coast, they've only got half a win for the year. It's not looking great for them. They couldn't beat Collingwood on the weekend. You think they're probably going to finish last, but I mean, they're not I don't think they're the worst team in the competition. They've been a little bit unlucky in a couple games, so maybe they can win a few games coming home. They've still got 6 matches left. If they can get a couple of them, then it's not a complete waste of a season. And that is everything. AFLW round 5/round 6. Big weekend of footy coming up. I implore you to give the AFLW a chance. I mean, if you're listening this long, you probably already are giving them a chance. But in all honesty, it is a very fast developing league, and it's enjoyable to watch. I went, as I said, to the Richmond game yesterday, Richmond North Melbourne, and it was an entertaining way to spend a couple hours. So check out the games. There's 12 games this weekend. It's going to be a busy, hectic weekend. But I'm looking forward to it. AFL's done for the season, so we got AFLW. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the channel, whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, either or both. Subscribe to them both. YouTube, there's plenty of content every day, especially on AFL men's competition. That's my main thing that I focus on. But so go check all that out. There's tons of videos. There's going to be a season wrap for Sydney tomorrow, season wrap for Brisbane the day after. The grand final review podcast goes live on Friday on Spotify, YouTube. There's going to be plenty of other stuff coming out over the coming weeks. There's free agency, there's trade week, draft is still a month away, but that will be also covered. So plenty of content still coming out in season 2024 as we build towards 2025, where I really want to grow this and make this a huge thing. So follow along. Thanks for joining in. Check out all the socials, and I'll catch you on the next one.